Hey everybody, it's PartyElite, and today we're taking another look at Steam's February Next Fest to highlight some great games worth checking out. If you missed my previous video and selection of 9 games, you can find it linked in the description and pinned comment down below, as well as on screen at the end of this video. As always, the focus here is on strategy, sim, management, and city building style games, and if you find anything in here that piques your interest, consider hitting the like button. With all that said, and with timestamps down below, let's begin. I've been looking forward to King's Orders since I first came across it, and I even included it in my most anticipated strategy games list for 2023, a video you can find linked in the description and pinned comment down below as well if you're interested. Set in medieval Europe, this grand strategy game has an extremely unique element that makes it well worth checking out. Any orders you want to give to your generals, your stewards, or your spies, and any responses to said orders need to go back and forth in the form of missives that need to travel the countryside in the hands of messengers. Need an update about the current state of one of your holdings? Send a messenger requesting one and wait to hear back. Need to collect taxes from a holding? Send a messenger, wait to hear back. Need to commission the construction of a building? You guessed it, send a messenger and wait to hear back. You need to stay on top of countless moving parts just to make sure your nation is maintained, keeping people happy, training troops, building buildings, and collecting taxes, and on top of that, you'll need to manage military matters too, ordering the recruitment of troops at your holdings, ordering their joining generals, and then ordering said generals to tell them where to go, who to attack, and for what purpose. You won't see their movements in real time though. You'll wait for updates, including to their movements and ultimately to how their battles played out. Updates that are written in great detail, highlighting numbers, weather conditions, and the fate of all involved units and commanders alike. Before sending troops into battle though, you might want to send your spies to report on what the opposing armies are looking like or what their defenses might be like. You might want them to infiltrate cities, sabotage buildings, or otherwise instigate rebellions to apply pressure. This is a full-fledged grand strategy game with economy, public order, construction, and military matters to manage. It doesn't just rest on its one differentiator, but instead uses it to create a truly unique experience with great depth besides. I highly recommend checking it out for yourself during Next Fest to see if it's your kind of thing, and I'll probably be releasing some gameplay on the channel shortly too, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Desynced is a very interesting game billing itself as a sci-fi survival game, though my own time with it during Next Fest has leaned heavily into construction and management simulation. Starting on a procedurally generated map with just a handful of drones to your name, things start pretty directly under your control as you gather basic resources and establish your headquarters. But through the production of additional drones, manufacturing modules, and assembly units, you'll soon start automating more and more elements to help you explore the planet and survive its threats. The modular aspect of things was particularly interesting to me, where each building and unit has a set number of slots of different sizes for external and internal modules alike. Said modules can be installed according to their designation, and so pretty much any unit can be used in any way, so long as it has the right slots and the inventory space for it. Buildings work in a similar way, contributing different allotments of modular slots that you can do with as you please, and while some modules allow for the acquisition of raw materials, others allow for the processing into higher level goods, and others still allow for the manufacturing of additional units, the pursuit of new technologies, and more besides. Finding the right balance of different modules per building or unit while also managing the distribution of power gets really interesting real fast, and it only gets better when you start establishing chains between your units and buildings, telling which ones to deliver goods where and for what purpose and in what quantity, queuing up complex construction and delivery chains in the hopes of smooth, automated operations. There's talk of multiplayer and their implications of a pretty compelling storyline to be unraveled too, which is all icing on top of the very cool core gameplay loop of managing modular automated systems. If that sounds compelling to you, I highly recommend giving Desynced a try. Lakeburg Legacies immediately drew my attention when it was first announced, an absolutely gorgeous art style with charm and whimsy, blended with a very, very unique angle as far as colony management games are concerned, resulting in a game that feels very fresh. Lakeburg Legacies is all about growing your little town to be the most prestigious around to ultimately have one of your own crowned as sovereign. In order to do so, you'll need to grow your population and manage their duties according to their skills, leveling them up over time, producing higher level goods for the higher level demands of these ever higher level citizens. But the acquisition of these citizens is largely the result of you playing the matchmaker. I never in a million years thought I'd be recommending what is basically a dating sim to a degree, but apart from the Crusader Kings games, this seems to be one in the subgenre that hits some great notes that appeal to me. When you want to acquire additional people at your town, you can recruit individuals from neighboring towns at the cost of gold, though it's much more viable to seek a pairing for existing townsfolk instead. Going through Tindra, the fortune teller, you'll be able to find potential matches for any given single, and you'll make your decision based on a few factors, including how well they'd get along, but at times more importantly, what the newcomer to your town is capable of doing, and how well. They'll have different skills, traits, and aptitudes, and so they'll be better or worse at the various tasks you'll need them to perform to produce the aforementioned needs. You'll need to provide these people with everything from housing to clothes, and so you'll need to manage supply chains, investing in upgrades through the use of resources and gold. But with the game being so centered around relationships, you'll find yourself worrying about life expectancies and morale, and you'll find yourself dealing with newborns and assigning them as wards to guardians who can train them, ensuring future generations are self-sufficient, at least to a degree. Inevitably, you'll also find yourself dealing with divorces, heartbreak, infidelity, and all that other drama that one can expect from matters of the heart. And you'll deal with random story-driven events, questions of inheritance, and more madness besides. Lakeburg Legacies is really quite a unique experience, and I highly recommend giving it a shot during Next Fest. Urban Strife takes the familiar setting of the zombie apocalypse and throws you in as a bitten but not infected survivor, seeing you rescued by a survivor from a nearby camp. You wake up dazed and confused and immediately recruited into the service of said camp, and considering the world is in a pretty ruined state, having a tribe to call your own doesn't seem like such a bad idea, even if they start asking you to help out right off the bat. An isometric RPG with turn-based tactical battles, there are a lot of familiar concepts here, from action points and cover mechanics in Overwatch to inventory management, expansive dialogue trees, and leveling up. Still, Urban Strife puts its own spin on things, helping it stand out from the crowd. When outside of combat, you'll be able to sneak around, paying special attention to the detection ranges of your enemies, human and zombies alike, and needing to be wary of private property and zones where you're expected to be on your best behavior. To that end, the decision to crouch, run, or walk has an impact, as does your choice of armament. Gunfire, for example, will draw a crowd, but a swift strike with a crowbar keeps things nice and quiet. And when combat does happen, whether in melee or from range, you'll need to consider cover and what's actually exposed to you to strike versus not. Since you can choose what to target, in terms of body parts, your angles will determine exactly what you can hit. Cover doesn't necessarily protect the entirety of an individual, potentially leaving an exposed arm or leg, and what's more, damage is tracked per location for your enemies and your party members alike, having different resulting debuffs and effects. On top of that, ballistics themselves are tracked properly too. A stray shot can hit an ally or an unintended target, for example, adding an extra layer of thought to positioning and your angles. As you travel from place to place, you'll tackle scavenging and crafting, and you'll also help build up and upgrade the survivor camp that rescued you in the first place. Urban Strife has a lot of interesting ideas alongside a really nice visual style. I know the whole zombie thing can feel a little tired, at least in my humble opinion, but Urban Strife has enough fresh ideas, making it worth checking out during Next Fest. Howl is a beautiful little game that plays in many ways like a narrative puzzle game built around the idea of turn-based, grid-based gameplay. The art style and soundscape are extremely charming, adding a layer of both whimsy and grimness to the planned 60 levels, and the demo does a great job of showing what you can expect from the early parts of the game. You play the role of a hero, immune to the plague ravaging the world that turns people into beasts when they hear the howl of said beast. Each chapter is drawn out as a map that you progress through level by level, choosing alternate paths at times to avoid or dive into trouble and resources, or perhaps choosing a path that unlocks a new skill for you to use at some point. Each level is about getting to a specific tile, and each level comes with an expected number of turns you should be able to do so in. Each extra turn you take chips away at the confidence you collect at the end of the level, up to a maximum of 3, and confidence is a resource by which you unlock abilities. It's not that easy though, as you'll typically face off against the beasts ravaging the lands, or sometimes be distracted by innocents that need saving, providing you with extra confidence if you manage to do so, but at the cost of extra turns. As for the beasts themselves, killing them earns you skulls, which are also used as a resource on the map. In order to kill them, you'll either use your limited number of arrows per level, or your special magical abilities, but be warned, you will be actively hunted should you get close enough to the enemy. When that happens, each turn plays as a sort of we-go system. You'll plan your moves, but for each action you take, your enemies will take an action too, going back and forth. Fortunately for you, They telegraph their moves, but it very quickly becomes a complex web of moves and counter moves to stay alive, using your limited ammunition, and killing or dodging the beasts as you make your way to the end of the level within as few turns as possible. Howl is a fun and beautiful narrative experience with some good room for challenge as the puzzles grow more and more complex, and if you like how that sounds, I highly recommend you check it out during Next Fest. Engineered to Purpose is an upcoming tower defense game with an extremely dark and surreal aesthetic that immediately caught my eye. A narratively driven sci-fi game, you'll find a lot of the familiar systems from the genre. Enemy hordes move towards you along a fixed path, and you have to put up structures to shoot them down before too many of them make it all the way through and destroy you. The structures you'll be placing are all towers, and each can be upgraded using energy collected by destroying your enemies. The same energy is needed to place additional towers along predetermined spots on the route, so it becomes a balancing act of focusing all your firepower in specific areas with upgraded towers, or spreading it out with more weaker towers instead. The enemies you face will determine your approach. Some are beefier and take more focused fire, others are quick and will dash past attacks if you don't have multiple lines of defense, so on and so forth. Between levels and mid-level, if you have the opportunity and resources on hand, you'll also be able to design custom towers from the ground up for future use, picking which towers to keep on hand for any given level before you dive into it. The parts you pull together will determine the strengths and weaknesses of your towers and your overall strategy as a whole for the level 2. I'm very intrigued by the sheer darkness of the storyline on display and the trippy visual style applied across the board as well. If you find yourself equally intrigued, don't hesitate to check it out for yourself during Next Fest. Cardboard Town is a deck-based city builder with roguelike elements that has some interesting progression that catches up to you real quick if you let things slip through the cracks. Every turn represents a day, and each day you earn gold coins equivalent to your city's current level, as determined by its population. These coins are then spent to use the cards in your hand, drawn at random from a pile that slowly grows over time as you reach higher levels, or as you place specific buildings to unlock additional options. As the days go on, you'll trigger events that will cause additional trouble, and the only way to counter these troubles is to utilize some of the cards, or otherwise spend the resources generated by the cards you play, accumulated over time for emergencies like these, or to play additional cards that typically require more than just coins. The systems themselves are all fairly simple in theory, but when they start to intertwine and intersect, things start to get challenging. Anytime one of the resources enters into the negatives, not only will you be unable to play any card that needs them, but you'll also accumulate one of the 3 red alerts. And when you get all 3, it's game over. Everything from roads to power plants to forests can only be placed if the card ends up in your hand, and balancing current costs with future potential costs and trying to keep all your resources in the positive as the game throws emergencies your way is a very fun juggling act to check out during the Next Fest. There you have it, folks. 7 more games to check out during this Next Fest. If you want to stay up to date with strategy, sim, management, and city building style games, you should subscribe to this channel. And if you're looking for more games to try during Next Fest, check out the video I've linked on screen right now. As always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who've been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly. And of course, a big old thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.